In this demonstration, we'll show you how to use the collection details pattern in Visual Builder. So the idea here is you have a collection here, you can search the collection, and when you click on an item in the collection, you get the information about it over here on the right side. Okay, and you can switch or add other items over here. If you really want to, you can even edit a collection and do some editing and then click update to update the information. So how do you build a page like this? So if you have an application that was configured to use the Redwood component, so you're using the Redwood starter application, when you create a page, one of the options you're going to have here is this collection detail page template, and you can click to create such a page. If you switch to the design view, you would see you have the full template in place. All the components are kind of laid out for you. You just need to bind them to variables or bind the variables to sources of data. There's also a bunch of events already defined for you. So basically, we get you a head start on how to build this if you're using this template. And you can follow the instructions for this component from the component exchange. But I'm going to take a little different approach. I'm going to build this from scratch, just using this tag here. In a new page. So we have a new page here. It's basically empty, and we can just paste this tag, close the tag for the collection detail page, and that basically brings us the page template into our page. Now you can configure the page. So you can add a page title, such as employees, select and edit as a subtitle. You can set it to be a mixed mode and a bunch of other things that you can set on the template. So we have 3 slots, and into those slots we're going to drop information. So first, the default slot. The default slot is where you're going to have your collection. So the Redwood best practice is to use a collection container or a collection container advanced and put it inside the default slot. And as you can see, this brings you also a search slot. So we're going to use a search component. In the template, they use a smart search, but it's a little complex to set up. So we're going to use a simple input search here. I'm going to bind this into a new variable, which we're going to call the search variable. Right. Then into the collection slot, we're going to bring in a collection of items. In our case, we have employees, so we can drag and drop it into the collection slot. Let's drop it as a list, for example. And we're going to use the Redwood list template here. I'm going to show you the name as the primary text, the job secondary, and we'll use the picture as the avatar source. We want to enable you to do a search, so we'll define a filter criteria where name equal to whatever we have in the search variable. Not equal, it's actually contains. So that's your basic side panel for your application. You would also want to go to the list properties and turn selection for a single item to be on in here. All right, if you actually run the page right now, all you would see is this list over here. Should search as well. Okay, so you can search on things and then you can select them. So that's the basic functionality of the left side. Now let's go over and work on the right side. So first of all, for the template itself, there's an important attribute called selected items. Okay, so that's the one you see over here. And this is an array of objects, and it contains basically an array of all the objects that were selected, because we can also do a list that selects multiple records. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new variable. I'm going to call it selected. It's going to be of type array, and this would be an array of objects. And this way we have a variable that indicates whether we selected something or not. Now what we need to do is when we actually select something in the list, so we go to the list, there's an event here when first selected items. Okay, we want to assign a value into this selected variable. Okay, so we're actually going to assign it into the selected 0 variable, like that. Okay, so into the first item in the array, And what we're going to put here is basically the raw data. Okay, so that would be what we store in that variable. So now we're going to work with the detail slot. So on the detail slot, we're going to have a component called detail panel. And that's a special, again, Redwood pattern for that area. Now the detail panel itself has a bunch of properties. Okay. For example, you can have the title, subtitle, whether to have an edit button, and what's the edit mode. Okay. So for the edit mode, I'm going to create a variable called edit mode. And that's going to be a string. Now, by the way, if I remove this for a second, by default, it can be on and off. So if I'm having a variable here, I should probably define for this edit mode variable a default value, which by default it's off. We're not editing initially. Now into the detail panel, we want to take the employees, drop it inside here as a form. Because we would want to also be able to edit, we're going to drop it as an edit form. We can pick the fields, rearrange them, again, add fields, remove fields as needed. We need to point to the selected employee. So let's track the selected employee with the selected employee ID variable that we create here. And we're going to map it here and here. All right. So now we need to set this selected employee when we select something in the list. So again, in the list, we have the event that we created, and we're just going to add another assign variable down here that would set the selected employee ID to the value that comes from the raw data, specifically to the ID field, like that. All right. So now we can see when we select something, this opens up nicely. Now you can see there's a title here, subtitle, and buttons, etc. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back to this detail panel. Okay, and in the properties here, we can have the detail title. So one of the things we can put in the title would be the employee name. Okay, and in the subtitle, we can write something like click to edit. Okay, and if we want click to edit to work, then in our detail panel, we should have an edit button, which is set to on. All right, so if we now go over and run our little application again, and we click an employee, we can see the information in here, and there's an edit button that allows us to go into edit mode. Now, what we can see is that initially we're showing the page or the form in edit mode. So we probably want to first show it as a read-only. So let's create a variable. We'll call this variable the read-only variable, and it's going to be a Boolean, and the initial value would be true. Then once we have this variable, we can go back to our form here, and we can set the read-only property to be mapped to this variable. So initially, it's true. Now, when we are switching the detail panel, right, to edit mode, when it's on, we want to switch the read-only to be false. So we have this variable, the edit mode variable, over here, and we can define event when we're changing it. Right. So when we are changing that variable, we're going to check what we changed it to. So if the edit mode equals to off, like that, then we know that read only variable here. Okay, if we're not in edit mode, then this should be If we are in edit mode, so we're going to drop another assign into the else, then the read-only should be 2. Let's see if we defined it correctly. Let's just go and reload the page. Okay, click on an employee. Initially we're in read-only. When we click edit, we didn't switch it. I guess I put it the wrong way around. So let's switch true and false here, like that. Go back to the page, reload. And now when we click on an employee and we do edit, it switches to edit mode. We can click the update button. Now we need to hook up this update button to do something. So when we drop the form on the page, okay, it also dropped a button that does save. We actually don't need this button and this toolbar at all, so we can delete them, but we're going to keep the event that is associated with them. And instead of using the save button, in our detail panel item, we have an event that we can associate with the update. And what we're going to do here is we're going to call the action chain to save the employee. And we need to pass in the employee ID, which is for us stored in the selected employee ID, like that. So this would save the information about the employee. And we can do other stuff when we're actually saving. For example, maybe we want to go back into read-only mode, right? So to do that, we're going to assign a variable for the edit mode to be off, like that. All right, let's look at our page right now. Do a reload. We can filter, click on an employee, go into edit mode, update the salary, click update. That would save the data, and we're back into read-only mode. Now, of course, you can make this form look a little better. For example, instead of showing, or in addition to showing the information just text, you can add an avatar component into the form and have this be a large image of the employee. So we'll pick from employees the picture, right? So now, again, if we do a reload, when we click on an employee, we see the picture of the employee over here. Okay. One more thing that you might want to do is what happens when no value is selected over here. So we'll go back into the collection detail page template. And there's the third slot, the no selection slot. And what you can add inside here is a Redwood component called empty state. And empty state allows you to define some text that would show up when there's no selection. And then secondary text, for example, can tell them what they should be doing. Okay. There's other properties that you can set, such as display option. We'll do a full page display. Let's run our page now. Okay, so no employee selected yet. Select from the list on the side. I can filter the list. I can click on Sanjay, get Sanjay's information to show up, edit Sanjay information here, for example, give him a salary raise, and click save or update. This saves the information, and we can go back and look at other employees over here. So that's a quick introduction to working with the collection detail page template in your Visual Builder application.